Prepare yourselves, because what I'm about to tell you is not for the faint of heart. The situation unfolding in the Kursk region is a dark and desperate dance with chaos, where the lines between allies and enemies blur in the face of overwhelming violence. We are not talking about a minor border skirmish. This is a full-blown military maelstrom, drawing in nations and testing the limits of human endurance. Forget what you think you know about modern warfare. Here, desperate alliances are forged, while the threat of global conflict hangs like a sword over the world. This is a story of colossal blunders, brutal fighting, and a future teetering on the precipice. Today, we delve into the heart of this unfolding nightmare, examining the events that are making global leaders hold their breaths. This video will be divided into 7 chapters, each exploring a crucial aspect of the conflict. We will delve into the details of the offensive, the strategies employed, the heartbreaking human cost, and the alarming geopolitical implications of this unfolding catastrophe. This is not just about a single battle. It's about the shifting sands of power on the world stage. Stay with us till the end, as we unravel the shocking conclusion of this conflict. Be warned, what you're about to hear will be unlike anything you have witnessed so far. Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm in Kursk. The news out of the Kursk region has been grim. It began with reports of a combined force of 50,000 North Korean and Russian soldiers assembling for a counteroffensive. Now, the situation has escalated dramatically. Swords have been drawn. North Korean and Russian troops are now fully engaged in active combat, and the clashes are fierce and unforgiving. This is not some minor scuffle. This is a desperate fight for control over a vital piece of territory. The questions that loom large are: will this military alliance withstand the Ukrainian onslaught, or will it crumble under pressure? And how far-reaching are the consequences of this alliance? The world is watching closely as events unfold. The border towns in the Kursk region have become a cauldron of conflict, a place where desperate battles are being fought and where the future of the conflict might be decided. This alliance, born out of desperation, is now a major test for all involved, especially for those who find themselves caught in the middle of the storm. Kim Jong-un's decision to send 10,000 soldiers to fight alongside the Russian military is nothing short of a gamble, and recent reports confirm these troops have already been thrust into active fighting on the front lines. The United States has been quick to comment on the situation. U.S. State Department Deputy Spokesperson Vant Patel has noted that these troops have been deployed into the thick of the fighting. However, he also rightly points out that the success of Russia in using these troops will depend on how they are integrated into the Russian military. The challenges to overcome are monumental, including language barriers, interoperability of different weapons, and difficulties in command, control, and communication. Think about it. 2 armies, with entirely different cultures, doctrines, and languages, suddenly finding themselves fighting shoulder to shoulder in a high-intensity conflict. The potential for miscommunication, or worse, friendly fire, is frighteningly high. This is not an alliance forged in strength, but out of sheer desperation, and the consequences could be devastating for all those caught in the middle. Ukrainian and South Korean leaders have also weighed in with grim statements. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has declared that Ukrainian forces are now engaged in conflict with elements of the 11,000 North Korean troops stationed in the Kursk region. The Ukrainian advance, he notes, has pinned down 50,000 Russian troops, diverting them from other Ukrainian fronts. This strategic success, achieved at tremendous cost, highlights the desperate nature of this war. South Korea's spy agency has also confirmed North Korean troop involvement, further solidifying the claims of a joint Russian-North Korean effort in the Kursk region. So it's not just a rumor, but an undeniable truth of this conflict. We are witnessing a desperate alliance in action, a high-stakes gamble that could have major repercussions on the battlefield and in the halls of power. Chapter 2. The first offensive and its devastating failure. The initial joint offensive by Russian and North Korean troops to seize the Russian town of Malaya Loa resulted in an unmitigated disaster. Ukrainian forces decimated most of the armored units before they even reached their targets. These troops were forced to advance along predictable, paved roads, making them easy targets. This was not a sneak attack. It was a blunder of epic proportions. Ukraine's highly skilled and battle-hardened units, including the 47th Mechanized Brigade, the 82nd Air Mobile Brigade, the 17th Mechanized Brigade, and the 80th Air Mobile Brigade, were tasked with defending this sector. Their anticipation of repeated large-scale mechanized attacks allowed them to prepare a deadly welcome. It is not just about superior manpower, but about the clever use of terrain, intelligence, and an understanding of the adversary's thinking. Ukrainian commanders, knowing that the attacking forces were limited to two main routes due to limited road access, were able to focus their defenses. They set up ambushes using drones and remote-controlled mines along these routes, turning those seemingly easy roads into killing fields. These weren't simple mines. These were precision explosives, designed to tear through vehicles and shred advancing troops. The Ukrainians anticipated their enemy's every move and transformed the area into a minefield of death. Both sides have sent some of their best-equipped brigades to the Kursk front line, and the fighting is now unlike anything seen since the beginning of the war. The intensity and ferocity of this conflict is pushing soldiers and equipment to the absolute breaking point. This is not a conflict where one side has the advantage. This is an intense, desperate fight between two evenly matched sides that are willing to pay any price to win. Unlike previous Ukrainian defensive operations, such as the defense of Avdiivka, where the Ukrainian forces were critically low on ammunition, the situation in Kursk is different. Here, the Ukrainian army has deployed its well-equipped brigades to defend Russian territory they occupy. Though their hold on Russian territory has decreased slightly in the past 2 months, they continue to control approximately 700 square kilometers, which they are now resolutely determined to defend. This is a change in approach from Ukraine. Now they are on the offense, willing to go to any length to defend that small patch of territory. This shift is significant. It demonstrates Ukraine's willingness to make a stand on Russian soil and underscores their desperation to change the course of this war. This conflict has become a battle of wills, where both sides are willing to endure extreme hardship to emerge victorious. Chapter 3: The Brutal Reality of Frontline Combat. The 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade, along with other Ukrainian units, managed to halt the intense Russian offensive operations in the Kursk region. Their press service reported that the Russians launched over 30 units of equipment and battalion-sized personnel into the fray. The Kremlin had reinforced the 51st Airborne Regiment and the 810th Marine Brigade, throwing these troops into Ukrainian defensive positions. The 810th Marine Brigade includes thousands of North Korean troops, who are now at the forefront of the most intense battles of the war. This is not just a clash of weapons, but a desperate, chaotic fight of human against human, a test of determination and endurance. On Tuesday, 30,000 Russian vehicles advanced in 5 waves toward the 47th Mechanized Brigade. The Ukrainian forces responded with a devastating combination of mines, drones, and Stugna anti-tank missiles, destroying 10 of the Russian vehicles. The first 3 vehicles detonated on mines, scattering the survivors who stumbled into other Ukrainian sectors. These sectors may include the recently reorganized 17th Heavy Mechanized Brigade. It was a trap carefully set to maximize destruction, and it has been effective. The Russian advance came to an abrupt and violent halt, their carefully planned offensive turning into a disastrous retreat. The 47th Mechanized Brigade reported that the adjacent brigades eliminated the remaining 20 armored vehicles with Stugna ATGMs and FPV drones from the Unmanned Systems Battalion. These were not lucky strikes. These were precise hits that delivered death to anyone unlucky enough to be near the target. In another operation, Ukrainian territorial defense fighters eliminated a Russian assault group crossing the SLE River in the Kursk region. The 129th Separate Territorial Defense Brigade's Rugby Team Assault Company reported the troops were annihilated after crossing the river, highlighting the desperation of the Russian forces and their willingness to throw bodies into the grinder. The Russian command had sent fighters across the river on boats without armored support, resulting in a slaughter. At least 7 Russian soldiers were attacked immediately upon landing by Ukrainian soldiers, artillery, and FPV attack drones. It was a total and complete massacre. The Russian soldiers scattered, trying to hide in bushes and trees, but all to no avail. According to the Ukrainian military, the entire assault group was destroyed. It's crucial to note that the Russian strike group also included North Korean soldiers, though specific details of their casualties are still unconfirmed. This points out the fact that the battle is not only against the Russians, but also against the North Korean soldiers, who are now paying the price for Kim Jong-un's alliance with Putin. Despite these record losses, the Russians show no signs of stopping and are trying to capture a small patch of territory in the face of overwhelming Ukrainian resistance. The ferocity of this battle is pushing both sides to their limits, creating a brutal and devastating conflict of endurance. Chapter 4. The missed deadlines in the political chess game. Russian President Vladimir Putin had initially set a deadline of October 1st to retake Kursk, which they clearly missed. This failure underscores the massive miscalculation made by the Russian military in this area. The new deadline is apparently the inauguration of US President-elect Donald Trump in January. Trump had pledged to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours of his election, which, of course, he failed to deliver. The political landscape is as chaotic as the battlefields. The political maneuvering of world leaders has a direct impact on the lives of soldiers on the front lines. The situation is so dynamic and rapidly changing that nobody can really predict what is going to happen next. In a post-election phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Trump proposed a ceasefire that would freeze the front lines. This proposal, lacking any enforcement mechanism, would grant Russia control of 25,000 square miles of Ukrainian territory. In return, Ukraine would control 250 square miles of Kursk, but only if they can hold the territory. The proposal is clearly unfair and would likely never be accepted by Ukraine, but it shows that the outcome of this war is directly influenced by political calculations being made in boardrooms and offices around the world. These deals are made by politicians, but paid for by the blood of soldiers on the front lines. Putin is willing to sacrifice countless Russian lives to secure this territory, highlighting the extreme political stakes involved. This war is not just a military conflict. It's a highly political game being played on a global scale, with lives and territory as the stakes. The 47th Mechanized Brigade commanders recognize the urgency of the situation, with no time for border raids. Russia was fully committed to the offensive in Kursk, and now the Ukrainians are too. This is a war of attrition, where both sides are pouring all their resources into a bloody and desperate fight. The commanders on both sides realize that there is no room for error, and that any misstep can mean a total defeat. The future of the conflict will ultimately be decided by the outcome of this intense and desperate fight in the Kursk region. What awaits Russian and North Korean troops under these circumstances? We're about to see a further escalation of this brutal conflict. This is not going to end well. Chapter 5. The absurdity of the alliance. Bringing North Korean soldiers to fight alongside Russian troops has not been the military coup Putin had envisioned. Instead, the battlefield is now a mess of language barriers, cultural clashes, and logistical nightmares. This is not a well-oiled war machine, but a poorly functioning circus. The alliance is riddled with problems, causing more harm than good for Russia, and making both parties look weak on the international stage. What was meant to be a show of force has become a demonstration of incompetence and desperation. The reality is that this alliance is a complete fiasco. North Korean troops attack in Kursk, and from day one, it's a circus. Imagine two armies fighting side by side, but unable to understand each other. Russian soldiers say, "Take that hill," and the North Koreans say, "Go left." Before they know it, they are both easy targets for the Ukrainian forces, which are watching this mess unfold like some twisted reality TV show. Military tactics become irrelevant in such an environment, where miscommunication is the order of the day. North Korea's approach of guerrilla warfare, with sneaky ambushes and hiding in the woods, is directly at odds with Russia's tank-heavy artillery approach. It's like trying to run a three-legged race with one man sprinting while the other is crawling. The result? A large exposed flank and a disastrous plan, which Ukrainian forces are not going to waste. A few days after arriving at the front, North Korean troops are decimated. After a few skirmishes, about 40 soldiers fall, and 18 North Koreans get up and leave. They say, "Sorry, comrades, we didn't sign up for this mess," and disappear into the night. Russian forces now waste precious time chasing these deserters instead of focusing on the real battle. The reality of the alliance is far different from the propaganda, with the situation turning into a complete catastrophe. This so-called military alliance is nothing more than a theater of the absurd, with both sides on the brink of collapse. Chapter 6. The Propaganda and the Reality. Russia's attempts to retake Kursk are not going as planned. November 11, 2024, should be marked as the worst day for Russian forces in this entire ordeal. Nearly 2,000 Russian soldiers were lost, attempting to retake positions from Ukrainian defenders. It was a disaster of epic proportions, and the alliance with North Korea is turning out to be a colossal failure. The Russian media is doing its best to put a good spin on this disaster, but the reality is that the situation is unraveling. The true cost of this war is now hitting Russia where it hurts. The photo ops of Putin and Kim drinking champagne together only underscore the absurdity of the situation. They clink glasses, smile for the cameras, and try to convince the world of some historic alliance. But the truth is, it is a facade built on lies and deception. These are just empty gestures, a distraction from the fact that the war is not going well for the Russian people. It's a look here moment, perhaps beginning to question why their sons and brothers are being slaughtered in Kursk. For Kim Jong-un, it's a rare moment in the spotlight, showing off North Korea's supposed importance on the global stage. But the reality is that it is only making North Korea a pawn in Putin's game. All the propaganda in the world will not fix a failed military alliance. Russian and North Korean media are trying their best to keep the narrative of unity alive. There's even a doctored video that shows Putin and Kim toasting each other, drinking from their glasses to show mutual trust. But fact-checkers have revealed that this video was fake. The video was reversed, edited, and re-edited to show a level of trust that simply does not exist. These are not strategic partners. They are simply trying to hold this shaky alliance together long enough to make their own people believe it. This entire conflict is now turning into a theater of the absurd, with lies and deception as the primary weapons of war. The situation is not just a tactical loss, it is a long-term liability. Russia's inability to effectively use North Korean forces makes it look even weaker on the world stage. Why would any country want to cooperate with a country that cannot manage its own backyard? For North Korea, the situation is equally dangerous. Kim Jong-un may be enjoying the moment, but if the news of how bad things are reaches his country, it could weaken his iron grip on the North Korean military. Desertions and casualties are on the rise. The entire situation is a ticking time bomb for both Russia and North Korea. Chapter 7. The Unexpected Twist. While casualties are mounting in the arena of war, the Ukrainians and NATO are worried about a potential escalation. They fear that the first few thousand North Korean troops sent to Kursk will be only the start of many more to come. If Russia escalates the conflict by allowing large numbers of foreign troops to enter the war, what is to stop NATO countries from sending their own troops to fight on behalf of Ukraine? The situation is turning into a dangerous dance that could lead to a major global conflict. With a small number of foreign volunteers already fighting on both sides, the involvement of NATO-approved troops would be a very different matter. This would bring NATO and Russian forces into direct contact, significantly expanding the scope of the conflict and risking the formal involvement of NATO and the Collective Security Treaty Organization, CSTO, a Russian-led alliance of post-Soviet states. The choice by Russia to bring in North Korean troops has opened a dangerous Pandora's box. This war is now teetering on the brink of a global crisis. The situation is now on a knife's edge, and any single mistake could lead to a global conflict. Russia has spent heavily to cover Ukraine's attack on Kursk and its offensive on Donetsk. They have managed to contain Ukraine in southern Russia and are slowly advancing on Donetsk, all at a great cost. An estimated 880,000 soldiers have been killed or wounded in these operations, translating to about 1,200 casualties a day, an unsustainable loss rate for any military. Russia's forces, depleted after months of offensives, are exhausted. Troop reinforcements are needed, but the new troops are not the solution. The use of new soldiers will most likely lead to even greater human wave attacks from the front, as they have done in the past with their own troops. Soldiers with no combat experience are more effective in defensive positions, allowing more experienced troops to engage in offensive operations to retake Russian territory. The war has become a game of numbers, and Russia is now losing this game by paying the highest possible price. Now this is where things become even more complex. Russia is massing infantry, artillery, and tanks in Kursk, and a new counteroffensive will soon begin. This is not the end, but the beginning of a new and more intense phase of this war. The effects of this operation will be felt in the region, but also in the international arena. We need to consider the consequences. First, how will a successful Russian operation in Kursk affect the war? Second, what will be the impact of North Korea's role in this operation? Ukraine's sudden invasion in the summer caught the Russian forces unprepared, with the Ukrainians seizing weakly defended towns and villages. Russia reluctantly withdrew forces from Donetsk to reinforce Kursk. This slowed and halted the Ukrainian advance. Those Russian units are now in place, ready for an offensive. If Russia succeeds in pushing Ukrainian forces back to the border, Ukraine will lose an important bargaining chip in any future peace talks. It will also free up tens of thousands of Russian soldiers to fight in Donetsk. This could significantly increase Russia's chance of capturing the entire region, putting Ukraine in an even more desperate situation. But there is something nobody sees coming. The real problem isn't the loss of territory or the casualties mounting up on the Russian side, and it's not even North Korea. It's the silent undercurrent of mutiny and dissent, spreading like wildfire through Russian ranks. These aren't just isolated incidents of desertion. It's a growing, organized resistance among Russian soldiers. Disillusioned with the leadership, disgusted by the inhumane orders, and sick of seeing their comrades die for nothing, many have started planning to turn their weapons against their own commanders. They are tired of the meaningless slaughter and believe that the only way to bring this war to an end is to fight from the inside. It was not Ukraine, NATO, or North Korea, but Russia itself that ultimately caused its downfall. This, my friends, is the untold story. The one you won't hear from the politicians, the media, or the military. The true ending of this war will not come from the battlefield, but from the hearts and minds of the people caught in the crossfire. Conclusion. We have examined the unfolding disaster in Kursk, the blunders, the battles, and the political maneuvering, and we have found that what is happening on the front lines is a reflection of desperation and chaos. The alliance between Russia and North Korea is proving to be a colossal failure, riddled with problems and miscalculations. The situation is unpredictable and teetering on the brink of a major escalation that could draw in NATO and spark a global conflict. While Russia is struggling to contain the situation on the front lines, an even greater threat is developing behind the scenes, within the very ranks of the Russian military. The situation in Kursk is a tragedy for all the involved, where the high cost is being paid by regular soldiers, and where the consequences could be truly catastrophic for everyone involved. The future of this conflict is now more uncertain than ever. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like this video and subscribe for more updates on this and other breaking stories.